Welcome into the Wrap, one of Sunbelt Syndicate's many podcasts here on the Sunbelt Syndicate Podcast Network. My name is TJ O'Sullivan. That's Dominick Crosetto. And we just got done with week 4 of the college football slate. Dom, Sunbelt went 6-4 in out-of-conference play, and we had our first, or not our first, but we had one conference game between Coastal and South Alabama. Just your overall take on the week. First of all, how are you? Because it's been a while, but, what's your overall take on the week?
Yeah, it's been a while since you and I have been on cam, but we've been doing a whole lot of work in the background, both in this realm and personally. So a lot going on for all of us. We're glad that some of you are tuning in. We'll go ahead and say hi to Artie Cat. He's always here. Also, I don't think he'll be joining for good reason, but happy birthday to Ben James. He said he was going to be having his birthday on this night. So hopefully he is entertaining guests and friends and whatever and having a good time. But just want to shout out happy birthday to him and a welcome to Artie Cat for joining the stream. We appreciate it. Yeah, this week we went 6-4, as you said, TJ. If you really look at it, this is the best week of Sunbelt football in the big picture of things. In week 1, we were 500. In week 2, we were 2 games under 500. Week 3, 500 again. This week, actually 2 games over 500, finishing with that 6-4 mark. Now, unfortunately, I don't think we had any huge victories this week. We had a couple that stood out a little bit more than others, but I do have to say I think the competition was a little lesser than, right? We've gone up before this week started against 7 SEC teams. There was only 1 on the docket this week, so we had a lot more MAC representation, Conference USA. So I'm glad that we had the better result, but we badly needed it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is the type of week that the conference needed, with the lack of the mainstream success that you had mentioned. But also, these are teams, aside from Vanderbilt, and I would give Liberty the nod. These are some teams that you would expect the Sun Belt to win based on their, I guess their placement in the college football landscape. So it's a good week for the conference to get things figured out as we start to really get going into the conference slate, which is going to start up next week and the week thereafter. But why don't we just jump into a cup? First of all, Destiny, thank you very much. The ball-knowing TJ. I know that TJ Corman's been pissing you off, so I'm going to do my best not to do that. But why don't we jump into a couple of these games? This is going to be a relatively quick week, correct? Relatively no graphics. We're just going to kind of talk, get through this week 4 slate. Why don't we start with the only conference game on the slate? Coastal Carolina goes to Mobile to take on the Jaguars of South Alabama. Coastal ends up getting this win. 38-20 puts them into an early first place in the Sun Belt East. So, Dom, what can you make of this Coastal Carolina team? I mean, 2 seemingly really bad losses. When they lose big. But when they win against teams that, South Alabama was supposed to be a contender in the Sun Belt West, and they still could be. But this is a big win for the Chanticleers.
Absolutely is. And it looks like Ben did join the show. Maybe he had the birthday stuff early. We did
Happy
shout you
birthday,
out, Ben.
Ben.
I did say it was your birthday earlier. Happy birthday, man. And hey, look at that. A real fan still joining in on his birthday. Could be doing some much cooler stuff, I'm sure. But he's here with us enjoying it, even though he said he has no words for how A-State played. We will certainly get into that one. But yeah, this was a slow start, right? I mean, that was not really a big surprise for the Coastal offense. That was the part we've said over the past 2 weeks when we've previewed the games. Where is this offense, right? This is an air raid offense. Beck has tried to change this and make it into one of those exciting high-flying type offenses, and we haven't really seen it. And I don't know how much we really saw, action-packed, amazing football on the offensive side, but they did enough to win. I'm just shocked by the outcome, to be honest with you. Could Coastal have won coming in? Of course. but you're going on the road after not playing all that well at home against, like you said, TJ, a team that a lot of us thought was going to be a contender in the West, and like you said as well, could still be, because they did move the ball pretty well. I mean, if you look statistically, they outgained them in passing yards, they outgained them in rushing yards for the game in total. The Jags did, but Coastal won the game. They played more mistake-free football, and that was one of the things that was kind of shooting them in the foot here in the recent weeks, is they couldn't get out of their own way, turn the ball over with interceptions and fumbles, and they had a lot less of that in this game, and it bid pretty well for them, as I stumble over all those words jumbled together. But yeah, shocking result, but one that I said we before this game we previewed. We said both of these teams are on the list to win this week. You better win. South Alabama, because hey, Coastal looks down and out. You better win this game, right? But then we also had Coastal on that list because hey, you haven't shown us anything yet. You better win this game before it becomes too late for you. And that's what they went out and did. So an absolutely tremendous performance by Coastal Carolina. We know that defense has been playing pretty well. They just needed to get some rest while the offense continued to find that rhythm. Finally, both kind of worked together to get that victory for them Saturday night.
Yeah, the defense really did come through. They ended up putting the nail in the coffin late with a fumble recovery return for a touchdown. This was a big week for Tad Hudson, in my opinion. He only has 112 yards passing, and he only has 18 yards rushing, but he showed, as you said, that he can play mistake-free football. He had a couple of interceptions in the earlier weeks of the season. No picks here in week 4, throws for 2 touchdowns. He runs in for a third. So this is a big week for Tad Hudson, settling into that offense. The rushing attack, 182 yards on the ground. South Alabama actually outrushed them, 223 yards in that regard, but 182, that sounds a lot more like the Coastal Carolina that we're used to seeing in recent years. Getting that ground attack, opening it up in the air. And you're right, the defense is this Coastal Carolina team right now. They're going to live and die by how their offense plays. Their defense is going to be consistent. So I guess I'll just ask you, through a third of the season already, I feel like we were just getting started.
Yeah.
Couple of days ago, it feels like, but we're a third of the way through the season. This Coastal Carolina team, you touched on it. The offense still needs work. The offense has not shown you anything. But what do you make of this Coastal team? Are they a threat in the East?
I don't know if I've seen the consistency to say that, but I do think they could go out on any given week and beat just about anybody. I'd probably put them behind James Madison and ODU at this point. I could see them competing with an App State, though, right? I think App State has the leading passer, rusher, and wide receiver come into this week. I haven't looked at it again, to be honest. But those three led their statistical categories, even at just 2-1 in the season against not great competition besides that game with Southern Miss. So I think that's kind of where they're at right now. Like, they do some things well and they can play really great games, but they can't continue to have the mistakes that are going to be costly. And so far, App and Coastal have both had those games, those mistakes, but they've had some brilliant plays in the meantime as well. Where are you going to end up? What are you going to do more consistently throughout the season? So for right now, I'm kind of got them on par with App State. And I'd have them both behind JMU and ODU from what I've seen so far. Javon Simpkins, he's got his first real great game of the season. People had been wondering where he was in this offense. Well, 84 yards on 9 carries, 1 touchdown, even got into the receiving game with 2 catches, just 5 yards there, so nothing tremendous. But I mean, he's a person in this offense they need to continue to keep rolling with in order to have success.
Yeah, absolutely. Coastal Carolina improves to 1-0, gets their first win in their first conference matchup. South Alabama, long season yet. A lot of football left to be played, but you liked some things from them. They had they had the lead going into halftime. It was really that second half they were only able to muster 2 field goals, one in the third, one in the fourth. So would you say consistency is something you'd like to see from the Jags?
Yeah, I thought I kind of had seen that going into this week. That's why I would have predicted them to win. But yeah, in this game specifically, yeah, that second half was not consistent at all with what they were able to do within that first half. Both teams started slow. I think it was very low scoring first quarter specifically, and then they got going in that second quarter. But then, Jags kind of fell off and had too many mistakes towards us in that second half, where Coastal kept the consistency up from that second quarter onward. So, yeah, Jags, like you said, still have time to turn it around. They've done well. Again, statistically, they were fine in that game. It's the little stuff. Just got to keep those little things corrected.
Well, South Alabama, they're going to head up to face a red hot North Texas in week 5. It's a 1-3 Jaguars team going up against a 4-0 Mean Green. So that'll be a
Yeah.
big time out of conference matchup in week 5. Coastal's a bye. So Coastal now has the extra week to try and figure some things out. Let's head over to our first out of conference game that we're going to be talking about tonight. Georgia State and Vanderbilt, the number 20 ranked team in the nation. This one can be quick, I think. They dropped a 70 burger on the Panthers, did the Commodores, 70-21 victory. Not a single. Well, let's see. Actually, they've got two touchdowns from TJ Finley, no interceptions from them. But it was just a whole lot of Vanderbilt doing just about anything they wanted to on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. And Artie Cat says he's got an off football question because he's seen the shirt. And for those that haven't, it's running of the bulls. I lived in Durham, and now I live just outside of Durham, and there's a running of the bulls 8K. There's no actual bulls, but it's called Bull City. The Durham Bulls, minor league baseball. TJ's very familiar with them. One of the better known minor league teams because of the Bull Durham movie. But no, I would not actually do the real running of the bulls. I mean, part of me would want to, but yeah, you're right. I've seen some gores that did not look pretty. So no, I wouldn't do that unless you told me, there was an easy escape route and I was far enough away when they really got entered in there. And I could do the cheap thing to say, yeah, I did it, but I was pretty far away from them. I'm staying clean. I'm staying on the sidelines for that one. I'll be cheering the crazies on while they do that. But
I don't know, man. I see you doing the workout videos over the summer. I think you can take them. I think you can outrun a bull.
Well,
I'm just trying to pump up your ego a little bit. I want to see you do it. Throw a GoPro on, get some content.
Yeah, pay for my ticket to Spain. I'll gladly take part. Oh man. But yes, getting back to the Panthers instead of the Bulls. They took a 3-0 lead, and I said, "Oh man, I got to get over to this game." I didn't realize it started, right? Panthers are up on the Commodores in Nashville, and I'm like, "All right, this is going to be great. Like, maybe the upset happens again." And that was literally almost all she wrote, right? They did score, and they did end up scoring 21 points. But it was 21-3 within several minutes. The offense for Vanderbilt was on fire. Pavia looked great. The defense came to play. TJ Finley and Cameron Brown both played pretty well. I mean, pretty mistake-free football, really. But it was just too much from a number 20 ranked team in the country. We kind of knew that was going to take shape. But, last year we didn't expect the Panthers to win this. Before they had beat Vanderbilt at home last year, they struggled to beat UT Chattanooga at home the week before. So I don't think a lot of people were going, oh, yeah, they stand a good chance to beat Vandy. And then Vandy's even stronger this year. Was the chance high? No. But to see them jump out to a 3-0 lead to start the game was cool. Gave us a minute of like, oh, maybe it could happen again. But yeah, like I said, it was just too much from a strong SEC team who deservingly, belongs within the top 25. Where in that spectrum? Yeah, up for debate. But number 20 looked pretty like number 20 in the 70-21 victory for the Commodores in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you see what Clark Lee is doing over at Vanderbilt, and if you guys haven't had the chance to check out the new Netflix series, the SEC, I think it's titled Saturday Means More or something like that. But it's an SEC documentary series. It's been out for a couple months now. They go over the 2024 season. What Clark Lee's doing at Vanderbilt is just it is phenomenal. He's taken the laughing stock of the SEC for decades, and he has put them into contention. So this is a Vanderbilt squad on the rise with someone in Clark Lee who I believe attended Vanderbilt and grew up in Nashville. So this is a guy who wants the success and has the tools to do it. So this isn't anything to do with the Panthers. This has everything to do with we're watching an SEC power on the rise.
Yeah.
You have anything else to add to this one?
No, but I'll read Beth's comments since we don't have anything else to add. She says they brought running of the bulls to the U.S. about 10 years ago in Richmond. Her son and her ran with them and joined in the tomato battle. That sounds like a freaking blast, man. I'll tell you what. So that's pretty cool. I don't know if it continues every year now, but at least a one-off at the very least in Richmond about 10 years ago. So that's pretty awesome. I would have loved to have, like I said, gone and watched. I'm not sure if I would have participated, but that's pretty cool. Already got Vandy for Clark Lee. Yeah, he's doing well. He's doing
He's
well,
doing
surprisingly
well.
well.
Georgia State's going to have a week off to figure some things out in week 5. They'll head back at week 6. We'll get to talking about them again. But let's go into the next game. James Madison. We've got Bob Chesney and the Dukes taking on former Sun Belt head coach Jamie Chadwell and Liberty. And this one is, in my opinion, it's surprising how not close this game was. James Madison takes it 31-13. However, they did take it to halftime tied at 10. Then James Madison just pulled away, kept Liberty from doing much of anything. It was really the Liberty passing game that was the reason that the Flames just weren't able to do anything. 3 quarterbacks combined for 75 yards in the air, no touchdowns. No picks, but no touchdowns. On the other side, Alonzo Barnett, I know that everyone was talking coming into the season about this leg injury and how it's going to affect him tremendously. But I got to tell you, Alonzo Barnett is still playing like an all-conference honoree. 213 yards in the air, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and then on the ground, another 45 yards and 2 touchdowns. So 3 total touchdowns on the day, 9 yards per carry. Alonzo Barnett is making this quarterback situation for James Madison really interesting, huh?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear now. He is the guy. I think he was always the guy. If I had to sell you what I thought going into the season, Fluka was going to be there to help out until he was fully healthy. I think that's what we saw in the first several weeks. They were scared Barnett was going to re-aggravate or re-injure something, and they kept him out until he felt like he was maybe closer to 100%. He was the only quarterback to touch the field for the Dukes this weekend. So I think that's very, very telling, unless Sluka took a hit that we didn't really know about and became a little bit injured. Barnett's the guy. Again, no surprise there. A great performance there. The interception was a little bit luck. They did talk about this guy, and I don't know his name off the top of my head. He's playing with a club on his right hand, and he's going to have this club on his hand for a couple of weeks from the sounds of it. So he was taking jug practice over the past week or two, trying to get a grip on how to catch a ball with this club hand of his. He intercepted this thing with his left arm and was holding it like a running back. And the wide receiver, I think it was actually James Madison's tight end, if I remember correctly, they kind of tied up for it in the end zone. I think the tie typically goes to the offensive player, but the fact that this guy had it securely within his grasp, even one-handed like that, was really impressive. So It wasn't not a bad throw by Barnett. It wasn't ill-advised. It was an amazing play by Liberty defender. So to hold that interception against Barnett too much. I mean, it was so close of a play that Barnett turned around to his sideline and was like, guys, that's a touchdown. That's how close this wrap-up was, where you did think for a second, could they review this and actually switch it around? I think I'm okay with it. You know, coming from an outside perspective, not rose-colored glasses here, it looked pretty firm, like an interception, but there were some JMU fans questioning that. The Ethan Vasco thing, obviously former Coastal quarterback, now paired back up with Chadwell. He did get injured in this game, and I think that is what changed the game. So he had he stayed in, again, he was 4 for 10 for 37 yards, so he was not lighting it up. But we know what Vasco's game is, and that's the running game. He was 11 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown. So that's where he was hurting the Dukes as an offensive weapon. It wasn't through the air. The defense was playing very well, very solid in that regard. Then the other two quarterbacks, neither one of them could get anything going against that solid JMU backfield. So this game really didn't take a strong turn in JMU's favor until that fourth quarter. It wasn't looking like it was going to go Liberty's way after the Vasco injury anyway, but until JMU really put this thing away, fourth quarter. But they do come out with the first trophy in the Battle of the Blue Ridge. So they are the official Battle of the Blue Ridge winners. This is now a trophy game as they continue to play each other for 8 years or something like that until like 2030. I think it's like the longest tenured game that's out there on the docket or something. So yeah, that's kind of the story in this one.
Well, Liberty going to go and face Old Dominion next week. So another Liberty versus Sun Belt matchup. And James Madison, on the other hand, they're going to get their first conference game against Georgia Southern. That will be the Week 5 slate for both of those teams. Let's move on to another big game, another big surprise. Louisiana goes to Eastern Michigan and loses by a field goal. 34-31, the Eagles defeat the Cajuns. What's going on with Louisiana, Dom? What is the through a third of the season? What is going on?
Yeah, I have to have the same question, and I don't know exactly what the answer is. That's the hard part about it. It's just they're off. This was a team vastly thought to be the superior team in the West. Maybe one or two teams could maybe battle them, but they were often thought to be the clear favorite in the West. A possible college football playoff team. That ain't going to happen now. That's easy to see. Well, part of it we do know. The number one quarterback did go down in week 1. So that is a hindrance here as you get a young Daniel Beal to come in, and he hasn't really found his rhythm. In fact, he probably played one of his better games, 222 yards, 20 of 33, but 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. So still some ill-advised throws. There was at least one really bad interception that he did throw that I did see. Lynch Winfield gets in there. Again, he's kind of getting a couple looks here and there, mainly used as like a running back type situation more than a real true quarterback. Their ground game was supposed to be their strong point, and it hasn't been bad. Perry goes for over 100 yards, gets 2 touchdowns. Bill Davis doesn't quite reach 80s at 78 total, but he does have a touchdown. So that's where they're still working it decently. But the quarterback play is the biggest hindrance that I can see. But then I thought, hey, the defense is going to be strong, right? Defense was great last year. This is a team that gets to the conference championship game because of how well the defense is played, and just not quite as strong. I mean, you see flashes of it and some great plays, and then you see some stuff where the running back gets wide open, wide receivers wide open, and you just don't know exactly what happened. And then this is obviously another game where Noah Kim, former Coastal Carolina quarterback, yet again, and he had a game, 226 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but he looked pretty good. By the eye test, I would say that Kim was the best quarterback in this game specifically. Didn't have amazing numbers, but again, got the job done, looked very serviceable. McMillan for Eastern Michigan was incredibly impressive. 19 carries, 126 yards. I somehow didn't find pay dirt all day, but he was spinning off guys, getting extra yards all the time. So that was really the downside to what they did. And one last thing I'll say about this one, the Cajuns actually took the lead back late after a rushing touchdown. And it's one of those situations where they scored with like a minute and something left. And it's one of those, you scored too fast, you scored too early. And you hate to say that, but that's literally what happened, because you give the ball back to Eastern Michigan one more time. They come all the way down. I'm sorry, they didn't take the Cajuns never took the lead. They tied the game at 31. But Eastern Michigan gets the availability to come down the field and kicks a game-winning field goal. And it was just a heartbreaking loss to watch happen live, because the Cajuns had fought back, and you're like, all right, they're getting it to overtime. They got new life. They got the momentum. And it was not to be up there in Michigan this Saturday for the Cajuns.
Well, we're gonna get into, I think, the overall landscape now that we're a third through the season. Once we get through these games, and this will be a big topic of discussion, is where the Ragins were supposed to be and who could be taking their place. But we'll get to that once we get through all of the games. Louisiana, they next week are, let me check, they are home to host Marshall in a Sun Belt Championship rematch. But as we know, two very different Louisiana team and a very different Marshall team. So I'm not sure what the appeal ends up being with that game now. But then on the other side, well, we don't have to worry about Eastern Michigan, so I'm not going to tell you what they're doing. Let's go to the I didn't have it up. I was like, why don't I have this up? Oh, they're not in the Sun Belt. Let's go to the next game. Troy gets a win over Buffalo, 21-17. And speaking of teams that should make a push in the West, Troy, who gave Clemson a run for their money, and albeit Clemson is now, we've established in the college football landscape, not the Clemson that we thought they were going to be. They gave Clemson a run for their money. Now the Trojans are 2-2 on the season heading into conference play. What'd you like about this one, Dom?
The resolve, and Warren mentions it here. Finally, some halftime adjustments. We need to run wishbone until QB play gets better. Yeah, Tucker Kilcrease, 14 of 24, not great. 148 yards, not bad. Does have one touchdown, no interceptions. Ra Thomas threw an interception, and that was really inadvised. It was like one of those end arounds, and he almost gets tackled, and you're like, don't take the tackle, don't take the sack, if you will. And then he throws an even worse pass. He is not a quarterback. He did not have the arm needed to throw off balance while getting tackled to the ground and threw it. It was one of the easiest picks of that other guy's career, that's for sure. After Ra Thomas had just made a pretty good play, I think a play or two before that, as a wide receiver. And, the gadget play, I don't think the gadget play itself was ill-advised or ill-timed, but he just needs to realize an 8-yard loss or whatever it was about to be is perfectly acceptable in that situation, instead of trying to throw the ball up for grabs, and it wasn't even contested. But yeah, Tay Meadows, again, we've said his name a few times, doesn't go for the century mark, only has 68 rushing yards, but he averages almost 5 a carry, gets into the end zone once, had a rush of 20, which was his long for the day. Just a difference maker. Get the ball in his hands more often. Ra Thomas was the leading receiver on the day, 78 yards and a touchdown. Had one that went 41 yards. So they have the guys on the offense who can hurt you. As Warren said, we probably just need to see a little bit more out of Kilcrease to make you feel a little bit more comfortable about what's going to happen until Goose comes back. I mean, he is slated to come back from what I hear. Having surgery, he's supposed to come back in a couple weeks. We even saw the backup quarterback as well this week, 5 for 10, 54 yards. I think he's a Houston transfer, if I can remember correctly, but it looks like Tucker's going to be the guy until Goose comes back. And like I said, I think he played well enough here. Luckily for the Trojans here in the second half, they kind of woke up, scored 21 in that fourth quarter to really win this game, because they were down 14-0. before that. And it didn't look so great. It just looked like, man, it's not a terrible game. It's just not going their way.
Mhm.
But Roberson for Buffalo, their starting quarterback, got hurt. And when Gunnar Gray came in to replace him, it's kind of the Troy situation, right? This guy's just not quite as good as the starter. Gray wasn't bad, 5 for 13, 49 yards, and very limited action. Just couldn't get them into that second gear and win the game. Again, Kilcrease good. So, yeah, Troy fought valiantly to come back and win this game on a day where it just felt like it wasn't going to be theirs for the vast majority of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said about Tucker Kilcrease coming into a situation you never want as a head coach. Having to go to your backup quarterback with your starter going down with an injury early on in the season. But I mean, I got to tell you that the defense by Buffalo for the first 3 quarters
Yeah.
was pretty locked down. And I think that was the difference in this game up until that final quarter. You had 7 sacks, another 3 tackles for loss by the Bulls. I mean, it was 14-0 heading into the final 15 minutes. And then Troy woke up, and I think that, yes, halftime adjustments, sure, we can say that, but it really comes down to, I think it was more on the field adjustments when those halftime adjustments weren't quite working. That fourth quarter, you have to make those adjustments on the fly, and that's when
Yeah.
everything happened for Troy. So a big win for Troy. They improved to 2-2. They are, let me switch tabs. They are off. They are off next week, so they will head into their bye an even 2-2 before they start really getting into conference play. Do you have anything else to say about Troy Buffalo?
No, I'm just glad we got that victory. Buffalo didn't look amazing, but they were just kind of getting done. And you're like, come on, Troy, like wake up. And again, they finally did, and they got the win. And again, if they can continue to play like they did towards the end of that game, they'll be fighting for a spot in the West, I think.
Absolutely. Let's head over to another out of conference game, and this one is with another team in the West that just had a lot of expectations, and it's not quite panning out through a third of the season. Kennesaw State defeats Arkansas State 28-21. 3 touchdowns in the opening quarter by Kennesaw State to take a 21-0 lead, and the Owls just never really looked back. Jalen Rayner had a good game, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns. He added another just 5 yards on the ground, but that one rush for a touchdown. What do you make of the Red Wolves a third of the way through the year? This is a Butch Jones team that myself, you, David Schultz with Locked On Sunbelt, that we were all like, this team's going to be a lot better than people think. And, maybe we wrong, or is this just out of Arkansas State's control a little bit?
Well, they were the more consistent team after the first quarter. You could say that. They scored a touchdown in each remaining quarter, and Kennesaw only scored 1. So had Kennesaw not had the start that they did, you can say Arkansas State was the better team throughout the majority of the game. The problem
If my
is
mom had wheels, she'd be a bike. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly, right? So no, it's true. Like I just don't understand what happened in this one to go down 21-0 so quickly. I mean, before I could even turn this one on, it was 21-0. And I go, okay, well, let me catch up. So I pull up the score sheet. No interceptions, no fumbles. How the hell did they go up 21-0? It just seemed like every time the Owls touched the ball, they scored a touchdown. So again, they woke up after that, but again, little too late. And your best players still kind of showed on the score sheet. Just got done doing a radio interview with Dawson down in Louisiana for ESPN's channel down that way, and he was talking to me about players to stand out, and I had mentioned Hunter Summers as a wide receiver. Corey Rucker is the guy who would declare for the NFL draft and then come back to school for whatever reason. We don't know exactly. But he was going to take a lot of the time and attention for the defense. Well, Hunter Summers came on pretty strong at the end of last year, and he started off very well this year. He's the leading receiver, 8 receptions in this one, 114 yards and a touchdown. But you just don't have enough at the beginning of the game to win it. And it's just kind of a shock to me that this game went the way it did. Did I think it could be competitive going in? Absolutely. Kennesaw State has shown pretty well since they've been a part of the FBS and been in Conference USA. This is a game and a team in Arkansas State that has higher ambitions, what you would think is a higher ceiling, and they just can't play consistently enough to get to that level. They're on the same realm as a Coastal Carolina and an App State right now. You got good players making good plays, having some good games, but you can't do it out and out every single week. I just think those 3 teams right now, they could beat anybody and they could lose to anybody type of situation. Maybe not, the top 25, but everyone outside of there, yeah, they could spring up and surprise someone, or they could play down to their level and lose a game like this. So I think this was one of those types of games. For whatever reason, they weren't locked in and focused in that first quarter. They turned it on after that, but just not enough.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. You look at this first quarter. I mean, you've got the first 3 drives for Arkansas State, 3 and out. Next drive is what I will call the extended 3 and out, which is where you get a first down on the first play and then you go 3 and out. So that's 7 plays and you have done nothing with the football at that point in the game. And then another 3 and out in the next one. And Arkansas State starts with the ball. Kennesaw State answers in each of those ensuing drives with a touchdown. 2 of those drives, 75 plus yards. And that middle drive, which was 6 plays, 38 yards for a touchdown. That's a big time punt return. So that puts them in great field position into Arkansas State territory as well. I think you're right. I think it's showing up to the gate. Not saying that they didn't want to come out of the gates firing, but they didn't. And Kennesaw State took advantage. The momentum was with the Owls from the jump. And then by the time you're down 3 scores, even with a whole lot of game left to go, you've really got to turn it on. Because 45 minutes is a lot of time, but not if you're down 3 scores and you've got the Owls smelling victory after just 1 quarter. So I think that was a punch in the mouth for the Red Wolves.
Yes. And maybe the wake-up call they need to say, hey, we can't continue doing this. But you would think that that's already happened. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be enough to wake them up and turn any corner. We'll see, though.
We shall see. Arkansas State, they're going to begin Sunbelt West Division play in Monroe, Louisiana, to take on the Warhawks next week. Let's head over to our next game. This is a good sign for the Thundering Herd. Marshall, big win over Middle Tennessee, 42-28. Coming into this game, you're not sure which way Marshall's headed. You take the Georgia game out of it, right? Because that's just you don't take that one into consideration. But the next 2 games, they split them, and they look bad in that week 2 matchup. They look pretty good in the week 3 matchup, but it's a close win. But now you start to put your foot down a little bit. You give Middle Tennessee, I won't say a spanking, but it is a multi-score win. So what do you make of the Marshall Thundering Herd here in week 4?
Well, this game was a weird one. So it got started, and you had a lot of points in that first quarter. But I think somewhere within that first quarter is when they delayed the game for multiple hours. I think it was. Off the top of my head, I will say this: I've been working in the front yard all weekend, That's why we started a little bit later than we usually do tonight. So I did kind of fall asleep, but I woke back up and this game's still going on. So I saw the vast majority of this one, weirdly enough, because it ends up ending after the Georgia State Vanderbilt game, I think, which started quite a bit later than it, if I'm not mistaken, or at least an hour or something like that. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Carlos Del Rio Wilson, he's obviously going to be the guy. We kind of figured that out last week for the first time that's going to be who they're going to be going with. Throws 4 touchdowns in this one. Allen kind of stands out there, 90 yards, 1 touchdown. It's not really the name as far as running backs that we were looking at coming into the season. But he's kind of taken over with 21 carries in this one. And so we'll see if that kind of continues for what they're doing there. Lacey has a huge game, 116 yards through the air, 1 touchdown with 1 going for 68 yards. And I will have to say, like, we got to kind of look at Middle Tennessee as well here. Not a great team. They were 1-2 coming in. They're now 1-3. They hadn't won at home yet, so Marshall keeps them winless there. But the one thing that I'll note after listening to the Thundercast last week before this game happens, there's a little bit of history here, right? Previous conference mates, and Marshall hadn't had a whole lot of luck down there in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, when this game did take place there. So that luck seemed to change, right? There's a quick, fast start, a long delay, and then they end up winning 42-28. Very comfortable victory. It was not in question, I think, by the time this one rolled around, mainly because of the delay. There wasn't many people in the stands, certainly way less by the time this game finally had its final whistle, because of how Marshall put it away without any real question. Good to see the Herd performing like this out of conference and getting done what they need to before they really start into their conference portion of the schedule for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Michael says there, always good to win on the road. Hopefully catch Louisiana by surprise. I don't know how much of a surprise it's going to be. Louisiana is, as we mentioned, not looking great through the first 4 weeks with the loss of Walker Howard. So, I will make a correction, however. I was mixing up my weeks. The week 2 matchup against Missouri State was a that was a close loss, but it was a bad loss for a reigning conference champion. They figured things out against Eastern Kentucky. That is the mistake by me, mixing up the 2 weeks. But yeah, Carlos Del Rio Wilson is a guy that I said at the beginning of the season, he has the potential to do some crazy things. He has the potential to be a 4,500-yard passer. We are at the point now where I think that is out of the question, unless he goes absolutely ballistic through the final 8 weeks. It did take Tony Gibson a couple weeks to figure out that Carlos Del Rio Wilson was the guy, so you can't really fault me for that. But now that we have, I mean, let's give him a couple more weeks to settle into this offense. I mean, he's got some talented receivers. He's got a talented rushing attack to complement him. So I think that Del Rio Wilson's going to do just fine. It's a big win for Marshall. Next week, as we mentioned, they're going to go to Louisiana, and they're going to try and win the rematch in last year's conference championship. You got anything else for Marshall, Middle Tennessee?
No, I think that one pretty much wraps it up. Just again, glad that they're getting that victory over a team like that. That's not what we would think is a great team, right? Like we want those victories to come pretty unquestionably, and that's finally what they got accomplished there.
Well, this next one's going to be relatively quick as well. You got Georgia Southern taking on Maine. Georgia Southern wins big, 45-17. Maine is 0-4 on the season now. So this was, I think it was expected, right? Maine is not a football power. They are a mid-major relevant basketball program, but they've never been a football contender really. So this was a get right week for Clay Helton and the Eagles. So we're not going to talk about the actual game. I mean, we can go over some stats. J.C. French, 253, touchdown and a pick. O.J. Arnold led the rushing attack with 85 yards and a touchdown. I don't think that any of this really matters in the grand scheme of things when it comes to Georgia Southern. I think the question I'll pose to you is Georgia Southern is 500 now. They're 2-2 on the season, but it is a I would say scary 2-2
Yes.
to where they could be 3-1. They also could be 0-4. So what do you make of the Eagles? I mean, this is a highly regarded team coming into the season. Do you think this is Clay Helton's squad a third of the way through? I'm asking you for a lot of hot takes this week.
Yeah, no, I got one here. This was a team that you thought was going to be strong throughout the beginning of the season. They had a tough road swing over in the West Coast, as we know, two California teams they faced in back-to-back weeks. One of them was pretty obvious they were going to probably struggle in, but the Fresno State game was a complete surprise for a lot of bad
Yeah,
reasons.
they
Then
were supposed to win that one handedly.
yeah, that one wasn't supposed to be the way it went at all. This one, it's funny to read some of the stuff on social media and see how many Georgia Southern fans are not really feeling all that confident coming into a game, even against Maine. The rest of us were kind of confident, like, hey, this is a team that's 0-3. You should win comfortably. I'm not saying they don't score any points in Maine, but you better score yours. One name I'll throw out that if you haven't paid attention to or heard enough of yet, Camden Brown, the wide receiver, goes for 118 and a touchdown, but he's been a standout and noticeable in each of these weeks for them, for Georgia Southern, even in the games that they've lost. So if you want a name from that team that's not obvious, like J.C. French or maybe O.J. Arnold, Camden Brown, the wide receiver, is somebody that non-Georgia Southern fans need to be aware of when you go and play the Eagles, because he will be noticeable on the field making plays. But yeah, I mean, the thing I'll say here is the same thing that you've been seeing from Georgia Southern. First quarter, 7-7. The panic button was pushed all over social media. Eagles fans everywhere saying, what the hell are we doing? What is going on? Why can't we pull away? Why can't we take over this game?
And you
In the
can't really
halftime,
blame them.
right? No, you can't, because it's true. It's what they're seeing. The halftime score was only 17-14. I mean, that's not a blowout. That's not a comfortable victory. That's not a comfortable lead. And you're doing this at home against an FCS team. Now, they woke up and scored 14 each quarter the rest of the way, and again, won comfortably in the end. But where is this strong team that we're supposed to see? I don't know if we see it. Once again, go ahead and group these guys in with App State and Arkansas State and Coastal Carolina. Yeah, they can have a great game and they can make some plays, but where is it consistently? I don't see it yet. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're in this middling part of the pack, and that's probably where they're going to stay until they prove people wrong. I think that's what this team is.
I think that it's a good time to bring up the fact that this I this year is a very strange one in the Sun Belt Conference, where the past few years, I would say the last 5 years of the Sun Belt, or let's go to since 2022, right? Since the expansion, where the conference is where it is now. The Sun Belt East division in particular has been the best top to bottom division in college football. And I know that there's no divisions now, but you could say that the Sun Belt is, because of that division, one of, if not the best group of five conferences when it comes to football. This year, it is going to be a competitive division. It's going to be a competitive conference, but for the wrong reasons. You see a Sun Belt team in 2022, 23, 24. They go and play an FCS school. They go and play another G5 school. They're more than likely getting that win. And this is a very scary out of conference showing for the conference. Am I on the right track here, or am I reading too far into this?
Well, I think you're on the right track. I mean, the one good thing I'll say is, as bad as some of these weeks have been, and as bad as some of these games have looked, luckily, we are still 14-0 against FCS competition. So we don't have any like clearly bad losses. Everyone in the country will say you should have won that game type thing. Those are the games we're winning. Okay. So we don't really have any concerns there with that lower competition level. Against the American, sitting at 3-4, the Mountain West 0-1. The MAC, we are now 2-1 against a winning record. The ACC 1-3, and we know the Virginia Tech victory probably doesn't count for much, but we do have a victory there. SEC 0-8, and most of those games weren't really all that competitive, so that one's a little bit ugly of a look. The Big Ten 0-2, Conference USA, we are currently winning 4-3 in that one, and then the Big 12, we are also 0-2. But yeah, I mean, against like competition, we are still competitive, but we're hovering around that 500 mark instead of showing the strength of this conference, which we thought this year might be that year. So that's kind of the downside of the situation in that one right now. And before we move on, Artie says he stopped in Bangor, Maine on the way to Iraq. He said, good Lord, it was cold outside. Locals said it was warmer there than inland. Which is funny. And if you've watched the Mighty Ducks, you know Julie the Cat Gaffney from Bangor, Maine, was one of the famous lines that she delivered in there. It's the only reason I know of Bangor, Maine is because of that Mighty Ducks movie from long ago. So fun fact for you.
I just turned down a job not far from Bangor in Maine, which I told you about. Yeah, I was not looking forward to the cold, and the money wasn't there, so I'm not making any plans to go there until at least the summertime. I hear it's beautiful in the summer. I'm not trying to go right now. It's already cold here in Connecticut. But yeah, to your point, no losses against competition that should be beaten, right? 14-0 against FCS, but the only reason that they are, or is it 15-0? 14-0, 15-0?
14-0.
All right. The only reason that it's not 14-1 is because Southeast Missouri just got moved up to the FBS, and that was a 1-point victory over Marshall. So I think that goes towards the volatility of the first third of this season for the Sun Belt Conference. Every game is now, let's pay close attention to it. Because there is really no team right now that has really established itself as they're going to come in, they're going to win this game handedly, no matter who the opponent is. So conference play is going to be really exciting. But when it comes back to, CFP selections, this conference is going to have a really hard time convincing people unless there is a clear-cut best team that ends up winning the conference championship, which at this moment in time, I don't see it happening. Do you?
The only shot at the CFP that I see happening I will say that there's a possibility of two. ODU played an Indiana team that looks stronger than ever after Indiana's walloping of the Fighting Illini this weekend, right? So their only loss is to that team. ODU's only loss is to Indiana, and it wasn't by a tremendous amount. It's actually a very respectable looking score. So if Indiana gets in, right, that's predicated on Indiana doing very, very well. But if, let's say, Indiana doesn't have any losses and ODU's only losses to them, I think you're looking at a candidate there because they would then kind of have more of that strength of schedule. They're about to play Liberty. They'll have JMU. They'll have, if App State looks good, they might be able to have a victory over them. Same thing with Coastal. If they keep winning after this good game they've had, then their resume improves a little bit. The West side, I think it's Texas State, really. I think they're the only ones over there. Again, the only bad loss, if you will, is Arizona State, in which they look very, very powerful. Now, unfortunately for Arizona State, they've already got a loss to Mississippi State, who isn't a world beater. So that's not a great loss on their resume. But if somehow Arizona State continues to go to the pack, then, we've got two teams that have got some arguments to make. But it doesn't matter if anybody else from the group of five is undefeated. I think you're going to see them go. So those two options, as far as we're concerned, are gone because we do not have any undefeated teams at this point. So it'll be a tough hill to climb. You almost hope that, like, if we have a team that loss happened already for them, and then they go undefeated the rest of the way? Because then those other teams that have undefeated currently lose their championship game or something. Now you're opening that door where you got to take the hotter team, right? Like all these things, got to take the hot team. But we'll see if any of that kind of comes to fruition. I think, like you said, this is a conference right now that even with some teams not playing great, could jump up and beat somebody in a week they shouldn't, or they're not supposed to, and kind of ruin some of those chances, as we've seen in years past already.
Well, I think there's one more team you haven't mentioned that is in a similar to ODU situation, but we're going to get to them later. Georgia Southern, they go to Hattiesburg, or no, excuse me, not Hattiesburg. They go to Harrisonburg to take on James Madison. Whole lot of Bergs in the Sun Belt Conference.
Yeah, there is.
So Eagles, Dukes next weekend. Let's head to the actual team that resides in Hattiesburg.
A sellout
Southern
game
Miss.
there. A sellout game there, by the way.
Sellout game against the newest member of the Sun Belt Conference come 2026, Louisiana Tech. And Louisiana Tech ends up defeating Charles Huff's Golden Eagles 30-20. Competitive game until the second quarter. And then that was but to Southern Miss's credit, keeps Louisiana Tech off of the scoreboard through the entire second half. So what stood out to you in this, other than Braylon Braxton? What stood out to you in this game?
Well, first, quick correction: the sellout game is actually next week for JMU Georgia Southern. This game in Ruston, I don't believe is sold out.
I misunderstood.
But no, I was trying to get in there. Yeah, no, it's all good. I just want to make sure that there was some pictures of Ruston not selling this game out. That's why I wanted to make sure we corrected that. Which I'm surprised about, right? This is a rivalry that I think we previewed it before this week started. Dates all the way back to 1935, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have it in front of me on my paper like I did during the preview show, but these two teams have played a tremendous amount of times. There's a lot of history. They former conference mates. They're about to be conference mates again. You would think that the crowd was going to be pumping for this one. I'm sure the people that were there were into it and loud, but yeah, I mean, you would hope the place was packed out, and it was not to be, even for a La Tech team that had a lot of respect coming in. They were pretty heavily favored against Southern Miss, to be honest, as far as the odds makers were concerned in this one, but still a competitive game. And yet again, another game that we've seen, just like some of the other ones earlier, statistically, Southern Miss won this game. They dominated this game. Braylon Braxton, again, 392 yards. They had 122 total rushing yards, 392 I guess that's in the same realm with the wide receivers, but you had a wide receiver in Carl Chester who went 118 and almost averaged 30 yards per catch. So you had some really phenomenal performances. But yeah, the Bulldogs just did enough to win the game instead of padding the stat book. And I obviously know that's not what Southern Miss was doing or attempting to do, but that is kind of what happened. The biggest play in this game was a Kobe Fields interception return for a touchdown for 48 yards for the Bulldogs. And that was really one of the bigger differences here. I know it's a 10-point game, but that one, when it happened, put that touchdown lead up there and really just never looked back. And so, yeah, La Tech gets the victory. It's hard to crap on La Tech too much because hey, they're about to be in this conference, so we don't want them to be bad. So it's not the worst thing to lose a game like this in a weird way. But Southern Miss fans hate it. I'm sure they're not. Last week they stuck around because they beat App State and they were all over the chat trying to talk their stuff, which is great. That's what this is all about. But they've gone a little quiet because this is a team that they do not like, they do not respect, and they always want to beat, and they didn't get it done. But again, this is not a bad Southern Miss team. This wasn't a bad performance. They didn't lose because they were awful. They just lost because La Tech just played a little bit better. So again, I don't think Southern Miss is off track here. It's just a blip on the radar that hopefully they can get around and get back to playing a little bit less, mistakes, and this game goes a different direction maybe.
I think there's also something to be said with the fact that this is the first time La Tech has been able to go up against a Sun Belt opponent since they were announced as the newest member.
True.
And I remember pretty distinctly, we also talked about it on our show a little bit, how La Tech was not a very welcome choice to join the conference. So you have to think that those juices are flowing a little bit, where they're like, I'll be the first one to say that I thought that Western Kentucky was a better, more competitive fit for the Sun Belt Conference. Not that La Tech wasn't a good addition, but that Western Kentucky would have been a better addition. And La Tech, I'm sure, heard not just me, but everybody that was talking about this. And the first time that they get to go up against a Sun Belt opponent, they beat them. And it's going to be their only time this season, in football anyway, that they're going to get a chance to go up against a Sun Belt opponent. So this is kind of, I guess, the preview. They say, listen, we understand that this is Southern Miss and it's a new look Southern Miss, but we are here to play. We are here to win. Southern Miss is now 1-0 against the Sun Belt, heading into 2026, where they're going to see a whole lot more of them. So Louisiana Tech, I think, is owed some apologies by a lot of people. So
They're not going to get any from Southern Miss fans, but yes, you're right.
no, they're not going to get any from Southern Miss fans. But yeah, Louisiana Tech trying to make a statement, and I think they do so with that first half against Southern Miss. Southern Miss is now going to host Jacksonville State in their final non-con next week, and Louisiana Tech's going to do whatever they're doing because they are not a member of the Sun Belt yet, so I don't have to talk about them anymore.
No, we are not paying closely enough attention to them. We're keeping a distant eye on them, but yeah, we are not reporting on them as of yet.
Not yet. So until next time, I think they're playing UTEP now that I remember.
Which is a team we'll talk about here shortly.
But first, let's talk about another Texas team. Texas State improves to 3-1 with a win over Nichols College, 35-3 victory. It was always in hand for Texas State, and I think we were talking about the West and who's separating themselves, and I think that the West is pretty much at this point in time, it's a clear-cut favorite. Texas State is the favorite here. Did you anything that you want to point out in this game other than it was a dominant win by the Bobcats?
Yeah, it was a dominant win on the scoreboard to some extent. I'll agree with Artie here, and I didn't tune into much of this one because of the early score and the expected outcome, so I won't lie to anybody and say I watched the whole lot of this one. But from the statistics, I can agree with what Artie says. He says, despite the score, a bad game, really. Couldn't score 50, weak running game, play calling was ho-hum, sloppy penalties over and over. Bobcats have a lot of work to correct and errors before the Sun Belt play starts. And if you look at it, you can tell that, right? Brad Jackson, pretty good quarterback, 13 of 20, 180 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but pedestrian. Lincoln Perry, 15 carries, 64 yards, 1 touchdown. That's pedestrian for him. Bo Sparks has been phenomenal up until this game. 6 receptions, 63 yards. Again, for him, that's a pedestrian number. Wasn't even the leading receiver as far as yards were concerned. He was the leading receiver as far as receptions on the night. But the team had 1 sack against an FCS opponent, 5 tackles for loss. I mean, this is, they did have an interception. So Terrell had one of those, and that it just nothing really stood out, right? Like, this is just a game you win, and maybe this is the rebound from the Arizona State game where they didn't play great. They still can't really find their footing. This wasn't a game that they got up and really excited for. Everyone knows you're expected to win. I believe this one was a sellout, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Actually, an FCS team sold out Texas State. It's less to do with the opponent and more to do with the culture and the climate of Texas State and their fan base changing for the better and for the positive as they look towards this Pac-12 era they're about to enter. But they haven't gotten out of the Sun Belt era just yet. And if they want to win this conference and they want to battle for the Sun Belt West, as already said, they're going to have to clean things up and get a little bit stronger in a few spots. Again, they've got all the tools and all the weapons you could want. So it's not a hard thing for them to turn it on. I still consider this Texas State team above all those other teams we've mentioned as what are we going to get each week? I don't think that's where this Texas State team is. But can they get to that upper echelon where people are including them into a really, really good bowl game, if not a CFP type of entry at the end? Again, they're far away from that type of level right now, but I think they have the ability to get there. They're just going to have to step it up, as already said, before conference play. And he's also mentioned sold out game, fourth largest crowd in UFC stadium history. And yeah, I mean, again, FCS team, culture changing. Yeah. Texas is football state.
I mean, I'm just going to address some of that. I think that it's fair what you're saying. You know, the Texas State didn't look great against a subpar opponent. Maybe they won by 5 scores. I don't know what else. You know, this is kind of for Artie Cat too. Give them some credit. They won by 5 scores. They put 35 up. They kept Nichols out of the end zone the entire game. I don't know what more you can ask from them other than, you know, no, Brad Jackson didn't throw for 350 yards. No, Lincoln Perry did not go for, you know, his usual 150,000 yards, you know, but at the same time, Lincoln Perry was only given 15 carries. You had a whole array of ball carriers for Texas State. I think that this is more of a game where you never sleep on an opponent, right? Not a Division I football. You never sleep on an opponent. You see what Southeast Missouri State can do to Marshall. You see what App State in 2007
Missouri
can do
State.
to Michigan, right? Southeast Missouri State? Yeah.
Missouri. It's Missouri State. Southeast Missouri State is a different school.
Is that? But that's who beat Marshall, no? Southeast Missouri State?
No, Missouri State. Missouri State.
So anyway,
but SEMO is a different team. I just want to, you were just you were saying it for earlier. It's all right.
On me. No, now I'm seeing the logos. You're right. But yeah,
you got basketball on the brain because I think SEMO is a pretty decent mid-major basketball.
I do have basketball on the brain with my new media venture. But you know, it's 35-3 victory. It is a Texas State team that has looked strong the entire year. Maybe they opened up the playbook. Maybe they were working on some of their plays that they see analytically they struggle with. I don't know any of those. You know, I know that in some of these games, you know, with Nichols, the more successful football fan base is going to say, hey, we beat them by 32, but why didn't we beat these guys by 70? And I don't know how much I can fault the Bobcats for winning by 5 scores. That's just me. So I'm going to just take it as they've looked really good up until this point and they still won really big. And now next week is the week that matters. So I don't know that you read too far into this game.
True. Yeah. I mean, I can agree with some of that too. And like I said, I'm siding with Artie because, he's been a long time fan of this show and a contributor. And I know he knows what he's talking about. So, but obviously he's got his team colored glasses on, right? So he's saying, hey, I want to see more. I want to see a Vanderbilt versus Georgia State outcome, right? Like 70-21. Yeah, they've scored a couple of points, but by then we had our 4th string guys in there, and so like we put up our points when it mattered most. So, yeah, I see what he's desiring out of an FCS team. I've done the same thing when my teams played FCS teams and said, why did we struggle? Like we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that, but we still won by 28 points. But you just want to see more.
I guess I look at a 5-score win and I say good job. but
True.
that's where I'll leave that. Texas State heads into a bye week, and then they really get going with the conference play. So let's head into the final game, which is
Yeah.
the other team, in my opinion, that is in a similar spot to an ODU. ULM Warhawks. They're 2-1 on the season. They beat UTEP 31-25 on the road. Aiden Armenta looks pretty good. 136 yards, 2 touchdowns. He adds another 19 yards on the ground. Braylon McReynolds, 107 yards and a touchdown on the ground, and 1 catch for 14 yards in addition to that. This is a really strong showing for ULM out of the gate. They put up 24 points in the first half to UTEP 7. They put up another touchdown in the third quarter. They struggle in the fourth quarter a little bit, and UTEP starts to build some momentum, but they get the win. And what do you think about the Warhawks? The team picked to be last in the West, by the way.
Warhawks. I got the hat on tonight.
There you go.
So, I wore this because they keep winning. Unfortunately for them, the part that they don't have that ODU does have is a competitive loss against a ranked team. When they went up against Alabama, they got smoked. They got shut out. It was 73-0. So that
Alabama team coming off of a week where Kalen DeBoer, they were calling for his job, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah, it's just you've got to, if you lose 48-28 or something like that, it's still a comfortable enough victory for that SEC team, but you were competitive and you were playing pretty well. They didn't really have that aspect to what they did. They got really completely shut down in that game, which was unfortunate.
ODU looked a lot better against Indiana.
Yeah, and they looked strong even in defeat. The one thing I'll put out there, though, this UTEP team lost to a very highly ranked Texas team by only 17 points just a week before this game. So you're thinking, okay, UTEP hasn't stood out for anything. They beat, a lower level team, and then they lost to Utah State, I think, to start the year, but it wasn't a terrible, huge difference in that loss. So it was maybe respectable in some regards.
28-16,
yeah. So it was, maybe a little further than I thought, but it wasn't a blowout. How about that? But yeah, this is a game where you say, UTEP just had a pretty good showing against Texas. ULM better watch out. They're coming off a bye. Either they're going to be hot coming in to start the game, which they were. They scored 14 points in the first quarter, 24 points in the first half. So that was great because they did cool off towards the end of the game. But yeah, Aiden Armenta has always kind of been that playmaker more with his legs than his arms, but he had a pretty good throwing game in this one. Nothing amazing, but he hasn't been that top level elite throwing quarterback. So we're not necessarily expecting that out of him. You need to be serviceable, have McReynolds have a good game for you to open up the passing game. He goes 8 of 14, so he didn't even throw that many times. He does have 136 yards, but he's got 2 touchdowns. So, his average is only 9.7, which for a quarterback isn't bad at all, but it's not real high either. So he's not looking downfield threats. If you look at their receiving core, it's gonna, to be honest with you, a little hard to pick out a guy who's going to stand out consistently every single week. They've got that in the running back in McReynolds, but they don't necessarily have that in a wideout threat at this point, at least not something that's completely obvious to the rest of us. But yeah, they just got it done against a UTEP team that seems like they can be one of those feisty teams. It was a road game, again, coming off a bye, so they were going to have to respond accordingly, and they did so to get this 31-25 victory.
Yeah, ULM has pretty much established at this point that they're going to live and die by their rushing attack on offense.
Yes.
252 yards, 107 from McReynolds. Dorian Lewis threw on another 79 yards, so you've got a bit of a two-headed monster brewing in Monroe. And then you've also, going to the receiving, there's only 9 catches in the entire game. So it is tough in this one to kind of have someone that stands out. You could say Jake Godfrey with 49 yards on 2 catches. That was a was tied for the team high in catches. So, it is tough to say, but I think the big thing is that the ULM defense is really good. It is a
Yeah.
consistent defense. They started to fall asleep towards the end, but that fourth quarter, that's probably the most unsure they've looked all season. They have other than Alabama. We're not going to talk about Alabama. I
Yeah,
don't I
we'll,
don't
we'll
count
skip
out
that game.
I don't count Alabama. I have to make that clear. I don't count Alabama. Obviously, they looked really bad against when they let up 73 points. I don't count that game.
Yeah.
This is a pretty good defense for the Warhawks. It's a really good rushing attack for the Warhawks. Getting Armenta going in the passing attack, he only attempts 14 passes, and it's not like he's this dual threat on the ground in this game. He only rushes 4 times, so he was handing the ball off all game long and letting
Yeah.
McReynolds and Lewis do their thing. So I think that this ULM team is a scary pick in the West. And if you remember correctly, I'll bring this back. Preseason during the West preview show, I think I picked a particular team from Monroe, Louisiana, as my dark horse, my pick to win the West. And you can go back and fact check me on that. And I know for a fact that I said that.
Nice.
It's a good ULM team. And I think that they've got a lot to prove, obviously, but if they were to somehow run the table and get a berth to the West, you've got to consider a higher bowl game for the Warhawks. This is a good team. I think this is a much better team than the numbers indicate. And they kind
Yeah.
of showed it
And
right
it'll
out
be interesting to see if
the
they can
gate.
get to that bowl game this year because oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think we had a little slowdown in the video, so I didn't realize you were still talking. That's why I started to jump in there. But
All
anyway,
good.
this team that like you were saying, this ULM team could be underthought of because they started off really good last year. They beat that James Madison team that people thought was going to be really good. Then they beat the back-to-back champs of the West in Troy and back-to-back Sun Belt champs, actually, even. Now, Troy wasn't quite the same as they were the 2 previous seasons, so that you do have to put that on there. But they started off 5-1 before going 0-6 the rest of the way. So could they just be a little bit more consistent? I think they could, strong defense, control the clock with the running game. You have to be a little bit more dangerous in the passing game because the problem is with those types of teams can win championships if they're good enough at what they do. The problem is you can't get down early, you can't get down big because you don't have the offense to make up that ground and make up those mistakes or make up that lack of speed to get the ball downfield. You don't have the big deep threat in all likelihood. You have to have someone that can do that at least from time to time, if not more consistently throughout a game. So, yeah, can somebody kind of stand out and bring that to the offense and kind of evolve them a little bit further this year so that they don't have that sour ending that they had last year? Because they win one more game last year and they're in a bowl game, and all of that great start to not even go to one is unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I guess we can let's talk about, now that we've gone through all these games, let's take a little snapshot of the receiving or the stat leaders in the Sun Belt. You gave me that idea before when you were talking about App State having both passing and rushing. Um, but yeah, we've got AJ Swan, who's currently the leader, I'll say with air quotes, in passing yards because he averages 293 per game. App State had the bye week this week, so they were unable to get on the board. But we do have our first 1,000-yard passer in Braylon Braxton. 1,084 yards. He leads the conference. He's got 9 touchdowns. That's also leading the conference. Big performance from Braylon Braxton. And AJ Swan, he's at 879 through 3 games. So you imagine that when he gets his 4th game, he's going to surpass that with how he's played throughout the first 3 games for App State. Anybody, I don't know if you're looking at this list, but Braylon Braxton, AJ Swan, Jalen Rayner coming in at third in terms of yards per game with 229.5 on the season. He's got 918 yards through 4 games, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. Out of those 3, do any of them kind of stand out to you as like a favorite for offensive player of the year?
Uh, I think Braxton does, especially when you're talking about a team that won one game last year. It's gonna mean more and stand out a little bit more to the rest of us if all of a sudden you're talking about a team that you know was only going to lose a handful of games or less after losing 2 handfuls or more last year. So it'll be interesting to see if they can continue this pace and get some more victories on there because that's going to be another thing. We always know how the Heisman works, right? You're not always really and truly the best player in college football. You're a really good player on a really, really good team. So we know how these awards work in the lesser realms as well. It's very, very much the same. So if Braylon Braxton can get his team to a conference championship game, I think you're looking at a really, really good shot to win, player of the year for there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a look at rushing really quick. Rashad Dominick from App State. He is the leader through 3 games. He's got more rushing yards than the entire conference. 400 yards on the dot, according to the Sun Belt website. Next highest total is 364 by Kentrell Bullock, and South Alabama's played 4 games to Dominick's 3. So that is just goes to show what he is worth, how much he means to that App State offense. He averages 133 yards per game, the only running back in triple figures on average so far.
Yeah.
And then I do have to call out the Sun Belt a little bit. We've got a bit of a mistake over in the receiving category. You got
Oh.
Carl Chester from Southern Miss, apparently averages 174.8 yards per game in the air. So that's not true. I saw that number. I was like, oh my goodness, almost 700 yards through 4 games. No, it's not. So we're actually we're gonna go ahead and give the receiving crown to App State as well. Jaden Barnes from App State. He averages per game 112.3 yards per game, one of 2 receivers in triple digits. Bo Sparks from Texas State being the other. He's got 337 yards through 3 games, 3 touchdowns. His longest catch of the season was a 59-yard catch. So App State really showing out here with these leaders. Anything stand out to you that I haven't gone over or that I have gone over?
Well, one thing with the rushing, the one guy that I think we just below who you're already talking about. Well, first of all, Colton Joseph is third on the rushing list as a quarterback. So there's obviously another really, really good, easy pick for a player of the year if he's going to done through the air and on the ground. But a name that's going to keep coming around, I think, as ODU progresses through the season, because I don't think he saw the field a ton in week 1. Maybe I'm wrong on there. Traquan Jones, the running back from ODU, I think he's going to continue to impress along the way, especially Tay Meadows right beneath him as far as average per game. I think those 2 guys are really going to continue to pour it on and probably climb that list as we get further into this season. I'll just go back to, some names that people should keep an eye out when you play these teams. Ted Hurst from Georgia State, great wide receiver. Yes, the Panthers are not going to seemingly have a great season, but he is an amazing wide receiver who could play at the next level. Camden Brown, I mentioned him earlier in the show for Georgia Southern. I think he's going to continue to impress along the way. And then a lot further down, and again, this is another player that I think is kind of one of those sleeper picks, is Hunter Summers for Arkansas State, down there in 12th as far as averages per game right now, but I think he's going to continue to keep climbing up this list. The only thing that's going to be a downside for him is he's got a future NFL player in Corey Rucker on the other side that he's lined up with, so he's going to steal some reps from there, or have to try and steal some reps for himself from there Rainer's good. He's going to spread the ball around, and you're going to see Hunter Summers' name come around a little bit more as the season continues to go on. And yeah, those are some guys that maybe not near the top of the list that are really known names that everyone expects to see, but I think some ones that are going to be around at the end of the season for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's go into the week 5 slate. I know that I kind of just said them as we were doing them, but let's go through each of these games just in order so you have them. Starting things off on Saturday at noon on ESPNU, South Alabama going to North Texas. Big game. South Alabama 1-3, North Texas, the Mean Green are 4-0 on the season. That'll be a big one in Denton. 1:30, Georgia Southern heads to James Madison for a conference game. First one for both teams with 2 wins on the season. Like we said, Georgia Southern in a bit of a scary situation right now. James Madison looking pretty good through 3 games coming off of the bye week. Arkansas State, they take on ULM in Monroe at 3 o'clock on ESPN Plus. Liberty takes on Old Dominion, another Liberty versus Sunbelt matchup. That game's at 6 o'clock Eastern on ESPN Plus. Jacksonville State takes on Southern Miss at 7, also on ESPN Plus. 7:30 is one of the games that we were talking about in our best non-conference matchups heading into the season. This is the week. App State heads to Boise, Idaho to go play on the blue turf, the second best colored turf in college football, in a completely unbiased opinion sort of way.
Of course.
That game is at 7:30 Eastern time on FS1. It is, I wrote the article, so I'll tell you that at the very end of the article, I said that is potentially the most important non-conference game in terms of timing and names involved in the game that the Sun Belt has ever scheduled. So keep an eye on that one, 7:30 p.m. On FS1. And then wrapping up the slate, we've got the rematch of the conference championship last year. Marshall at Louisiana, very different Marshall team. And as we have learned, a very different Louisiana squad. Which one of these games, Dom, are you most excited for? If you know, and you can pick App State if you want. I know that's where your head's at, but which one of these games are you looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the easy pick here as an App State guy. This is kind of the jersey behind me here. But yeah, I mean, anytime that any of our teams match up with Boise, I was very excited when Georgia Southern went up against them last year. They got to host Boise down at their place. But it was a matchup that you want to see because you know Boise's that blue blood, that true power in the group of 5 realm. And now you're getting to go play at their place. Definitely very excited about that. As far as maybe an underrated one that I'll look at is that Southern Miss versus Jacksonville State. I think that one could be a very entertaining game, a very good game overall, especially with that sour taste Southern Miss is going to have after statistically performing very well against La Tech, but not coming out with the victory. So I think that one is one that I'd put on my docket. The ODU Liberty game going in, I think I used to think it was going to be bigger. I wouldn't be shocked or surprised, especially if Vasco continues to be out and injured, if ODU wins that game more than JMU won that game. So that'll be an interesting thing, right? We still have the royal rivalry between ODU and JMU to come this season. So it'll be interesting to see if they got some juice that they'll get from, hey, we beat Liberty by this and you only beat them by that. Like that'll be kind of a cool storyline. But I don't necessarily expect that game to be close. I think the Monarchs could win that one comfortably.
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting Liberty team as opposed to the first 2 years of Jamie Chadwell's tenure there. Going back to Jacksonville State though for a second, I mean, yeah, this is a Jacksonville State program that has been on the rise. They have been looking to, establish themselves as a group of 5 power. And through the first 4 weeks, they lose to UCF to open the season, but they lose by just 7 points, 17-10 final. They beat Liberty. One of Liberty's 3 losses is Jacksonville State. They lose to Georgia Southern once again by 7 points, and then they kill Murray State 45-10. So this is a Jacksonville State team that are 2 drives away from being potentially 4-0 with 2 overtime victories. So that'll be a really good game to watch. That, I think, is going to be more of a test for Charles Huff and the Golden Eagles than people give it credit for. So yeah, that is another great one to keep your eye on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So do you got anything else, Dom? I think we went through the whole slate. We went through the leaders. Went through next week. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think we really covered it pretty well tonight. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate TJ for running us through the whole slate for this week as it happened, and what we can look for as far as players standing out and matchups coming into next week. And we'll still have the preview for you on Wednesday as well. Myself and TJ Corman will give you that. We'll switch TJs for the night. We'll have TJ again with O'Sullivan version on Sunday night this week coming up as well to wrap everything up. And we'll switch over to Corman for the preview stuff. And then, he'll do his magic with the clip breakdown.
It's just Dom with his band of TJs. That's that's what we're going with right now.
Yeah, I like it.
One more thing, check out www.sunbeltsyndicate.com. We are continuing to roll out content. Right now we're doing previews and recaps, and we're doing weekly awards, which those will be out on Tuesday. That's what I'm going to decide. Tuesday is going to be the release day for our weekly awards. I know the Sun Belt comes out with the weekly awards on Monday. Those awards do not impact our decisions. But ours are going to come out on Tuesday so that you guys can wait a couple days and then digest what we have for you. So
yeah, the secret is we pretty much have ours before they make theirs, but we don't release.
We write the article on Monday, though.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Especially lately, I don't know who here follows me on Twitter, but I am starting a new media venture in addition to Sunbelt Syndicate. Could ODU get another coach fired? We shall see. Ricky Rane, the most longest tenured head coach in the Sun Belt, believe it or not. So,
we'll see.
You mean an opponent?
Chadwell.
Yeah, you mean an opponent? Chadwell's not going anywhere. His buyout's insane for G5.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think Chadwell's going anywhere.
He's got 4 years, $4 million a year. For Liberty. And I know that Liberty's got money on money, but he's not going anywhere. This isn't whether or not Jamie Chadwell can coach. This is whether or not he can get a quarterback at this point. He's going through the ringer right now.
Hey, how about that Salter decision to leave Liberty to go to Colorado to be like a third string guy? Could have been the guy at Liberty, continued to play well. And anyway, I digress. Yeah.
No, I mean, it brings up a good point, but I think it's a topic for another time. But yeah, that Jamie Chadwell's not going anywhere. But anyway, I think that'll do it. This is the wrap from Sunbelt Syndicate. I'm TJ O'Sullivan. That's Dominick Crosetto. We will see you on Wednesday for the preview. Well, Dom will see you on Wednesday for the preview with TJ Corman. Until then, we will see you later.
See you guys later. Thanks to our sponsors real quick. Don't Sleep Energy. Check them out. Amazon and Phenom Elite for all your football gear.
I forgot
See
something.
y'all Wednesday.